Hi, thank you for joining Simplify's webinar on how to decentralize sales planning analytics with SAP Analytics Cloud and BPC 11. We'll go through an actual customer use case and live demonstration. We'll start off with some brief obligatory information on our company, get into an introduction on the tools that can help you decentralize your financial planning process, your non-financial stakeholders, an actual customer use case that we implemented and is live, a demonstration, like you mentioned, and then a few minutes for questions at the end. So just briefly before I get into our company introduction, I'll just give an introduction myself. My name is John Essig. I am an architect and partner at Simplified Solutions. My background is finance and accounting. I've been in the consulting area for the past 9 or so years, and before that, I was in corporate finance at my CPA. Similar background for most of our consultants. So Simplify is a company based off of a group of people, a leadership team that's been together for close to 10 years. Our team, on average, from an implementation standpoint, has about 10 years of experience with SAP as well as and/or BPC. Our focus as a company, BPC, Business Planning Consolidations, is really our flagship kind of product that we work with, as well as SAP Analytics Cloud. We've seen a lot of traction with this tool, a lot of interest with this tool lately, last couple of years, as well as SAP integration. So we'll set up your, if you have requirements for financial reporting, analytics, planning, consolidations, we'll do all the piping that's required to make that happen. So not only a BPC implementation for your financial reporting, but also all the inner workings between SAP, ERP, and BW. We set that up start to finish. In addition to that, business intelligence, this is not, we don't have a huge practice in business intelligence, but we can help understand how you can leverage analytics in addition to BPC, dashboards, analytics for the field, etc. And then just lastly, this is kind of our company mantra. Our number one goal as a company is to have 100% referenceable customers. I think we've succeeded in that to date. That, goes from an implementation perspective, upgrade. We also provide support services, so have ongoing relationships with a lot of different companies we work with, and assessments. So, this is a little repetitive from the first slide, but it kind of shows you how we stack up versus large SIs. A large solution implementer, like a Big Four, can come in and they'll do anything you want, between S4 and BPC and BI, but not very specialized. They have some people that are perhaps specialized. They have other people that, if you get a BPC implementation, you might end up with a FICO person on your project, right? BPC is really what we focus on. We augment that, analytics and financial planning and consolidations kind of go together. So we can help you understand how to leverage the analytics tools that are out there. So yeah, really what we do focuses on EPM and BI. We've got the technical expertise, the SAP expertise, and then also on perhaps you could argue on some large solution implementers, we have a little bit more flexibility, right? We're more of an agile organization. We don't have layers and layers upon approval. You can talk to the person making the decision on the project. We've got a deep bench of resources, and we're affordable. So we grew up from a background of kind of a blend between boutique and Big Four. So we also have kind of a PMO methodology. So I think really, Simplify, you get the best of both worlds. It's just a subset of some of our customers. We have consultants all across the U.S. We do a lot of business in the Midwest, business in the South, business in the West, business in the East, focused here in North America. The majority of these customers have utilized BPC for reporting, analytics, and consolidations. So that's, again, our focus as a company. We're, a boutique company. We focus on those relationships. So typically when we go out to companies, we're doing, phase one, what's the biggest pain point? Maybe that's planning, right? And then phase two is consolidations. And then phase three is another piece of planning that maybe you wanted to add on. So a background, using SAP tools, how can you take your financial plan and decentralize that to the field and engage everyone? Well, I'm just going to take you through a quick synopsis of a couple tools that you could utilize to leverage that. So one is SAP's real flagship tool for planning consolidation. So you can do rolling forecasts with the tool, you can do annual forecasts, you can do sales planning, expense planning, CapEx planning, even balance sheet cash flow planning. And you can simply use the tool to help you collect and aggregate data from the businesses, or you can really build drivers into the tool. You can load, for example, for a manufacturing company, volume information and price information and standard costs, and even maybe bill of material, some minimum bill of material information. You can use BPC as a calculation engine to really build up your plan, which makes rolling forecasts easier, because then you can just focus on, hey, what's the change in my pricing this month? Update that, it recalculates your forecast. And in 2 minutes, you can copy in your actual data in your forecast too to true that up. So as opposed to spending weeks to rebuild this all and recollect information from people who are doing things offline, building plans up from a driver-based perspective is one of the probably bigger values in the first stage of using a system like this, which is just to at least collect and aggregate the information so you're not shipping Excel files back and forth to the budget. BPC also does consolidations, very, very, very well. We implement consolidations at a lot of different companies, legal entity consolidations, management consolidations, financial reporting, etc. The other tool that we're going to talk about today, which is very much a complementary tool to BPC, which is your flagship planning consolidation on-premise tool, is SAP Analytics Cloud. And what SAP Analytics Cloud is really good at is also financial planning, so there's a little bit of overlap there, but really financial planning as it relates to decentralizing it to the field. It has a great kind of simple to use interface that makes the acceptance of a tool like this really easy. SAP Analytics Cloud, look, based off the name, a lot of the investment that's been put into there has been into analytics and business intelligence. So it's a self-service analytics tool that is fairly appealing to the eye. It also has predictive capabilities, also self-service, and all of this is part of the digital boardroom offering as well. So SAP Analytics Cloud is a true software as a service solution. You can get it in public cloud, or like another one of our customers got it in private cloud, right? So a couple different options on deployment there. You can also use it for some very simple consolidated, reporting, or from a consolidations or management consolidation standpoint, you can view the data in BPC and do analytics and dashboards on it. So some of the key tenets to SAP Analytics Cloud, which again, this is really your self-service analytics, dashboarding tool, planning tool as it relates to the business units. And if you're a small enterprise company, you might utilize this tool to do your planning soup to nuts, right? Even if you're a large enterprise company. It really just depends on your requirements, right? So the key tenets of this tool is simplification. So like I said, this is a 100% SaaS solution built from the ground up with the tenet from day one of trying to make your planning process and analytics simple for you, so self-service. One platform for analytics, consolidations, dashboarding, and then having a secure and efficient platform with SAP HANA. So the way these solution sets work together is typically, what I've seen at a lot of different companies that I've implemented BPC at, is BPC is leveraged as the corporate financial planning tool, as well as a business unit financial planning tool, consolidations, and management reporting, right? You can get print-ready books out of BPC at the end of the day, so you're not reformatting things and trying to put them into a book. But where I've seen a little bit of a gap historically is companies have been a little bit more hesitant to take this tool and deploy it to their 200-300 salespeople, or to take this tool and deploy it to their 500 department or 1,000 departmental cost center managers. And there are a couple reasons for that. One very simple reason for that is the training that's required. So BPC is an Excel-based tool, which is great for finance people. It's one of the reasons that BPC has been so popular. Finance people really, spend most of their time in Excel, so a tool that's integrated with Excel and has those reporting capabilities, it's an add-in to Excel, can create those finished, polished financial statements, right? It's a big advantage. For the business unit, for a departmental manager, for a salesperson who never opens Excel, probably doesn't want to open up their laptop, probably just wants to go into Salesforce or doesn't even want to do that, want to be out there generating business, it's a little bit more challenging to deploy a solution and get it installed and get it tested. Nobody likes doing their budget, right? So the simpler you can make this from a deployment perspective, the better, right? If a salesperson could just email their budget to you in 2 lines and say, I'm going to sell 10,000, widgets, they would, right? So this really comes down to an operational requirement, and with a solution like SAP Analytics Cloud, the deployment is very simple. The web interface training is very, very minimal, and it interfaces with what I would call your enterprise planning consolidations tool, which is BPC. So that's one reason historically I've kind of seen a gap there, and from a training and deployment perspective, the solution makes that pretty simple. And in addition to that, part of this is also a cost consideration. So, if I've got to spend a fair amount of effort on training, and then from a cost perspective, I need to make sure that the benefits I get from this outweigh licensing costs if I'm only having people touch this a few times a year. Now, in reality, with a tool like SAP Analytics Cloud, it's easy to update your financial plan. You don't have those training requirements. You can have your salespeople, departmental people updating this every single month, and there's not a huge cost to this, right? You get the planning benefits, and then you also get analytical and dashboard benefits from a corporate perspective and business perspective. So basically, when you combine these 2 tool sets, it kind of solves some of those historical problems and allows you to decentralize your financial plan to your non-financial stakeholders. So your salespeople, your operational people, your HR people, again, people who aren't necessarily used to using Excel, right, can benefit from a very simple interface. That's SAP Analytics Cloud, very simple, kind of driven based off of that key tenant like we talked about. So I covered the first 2 bullets on here. So, if you're an existing BPC customer looking to say, hey, what benefits would I get from potentially leveraging SAP Analytics Cloud? We talked about these first 2 bullets. The third bullet is the bi-directional integration between SAP, BPC, and Analytics Cloud. So I'll show that a little bit in the actual demonstration. So what that means is I don't have to build another planning application again to be able to leverage what you've already done in BPC. So for existing BPC customers, you can take your existing application, you point SAP Analytics Cloud to it, and you can start doing analytics and planning to it, and you can actually write your planning data back. So that's what I'm going to show today to give you an idea of the complexity or simplicity, really, involved with that solution. So this is what I kind of view as a standard architecture for the deployment of these 2 solutions working together. So again, leveraging SAP Analytics Cloud for more line of business planning. So for expense planning, You can also bring in your actual data from Concur for sales planning. SuccessFactors data has a plugin to SAP Analytics Cloud. So you can use that for your line of business planning. That feeds into SAP BPC, which is your total consolidated management reporting application and enterprise financial planning application. So you may have some really complicated driver-based financial planning applications. That may be something that you end up wanting to do in BPC. But you can also leverage SAP Analytics Cloud for driver-based planning. When you implement them in conjunction with each other, you can build all the rules and everything in BPC, and SAP Analytics Cloud can leverage those rules. So again, just like the application, you don't have to build that twice. So next, before we get into the demonstration, just want to walk through an actual customer use case. Example of a chemical manufacturing company that we're working with here in Chicago. They deployed SAP Analytics Cloud as an extension for sales forecasting to their main BPC reporting consolidations and planning application. And the benefits that they saw leveraging Analytics Cloud, some of the things that I already talked about, very simple deployment with low footprint and minimal training. So they rolled this out to 125 plus sales account executives, essentially, for their budget process this year. Those account executives were responsible for basically, logging on to Chrome Analytics Cloud. It pulls up their territory for them, has all their volume information preceded, and they'd update their volume budget, hit save, and then they would have that information available within BPC, and where BPC would do the math to multiply that by pricing information and help them build up their P&L. So it automated the collection and aggregation of all that data, so there's no one doing this offline in Excel. There's no one having to run a distribution collection, wizard to try to collect this and work around security, which was another kind of workaround historically with this tool set with BPC before we had SAP Analytics Cloud. So it saved a lot of overhead time, right? As these people were updating this plan, the data in BPC was updated near real time, updating their entire financial view, right, of their budget. So this was ideal for interface for these non-financial stakeholders. Required 1 hour training in WebEx to get them up and running. So, this didn't require us to have all the salespeople fly in everywhere for a day to meet and go through this and get trained. Getting up and running on this tool is pretty simple, right? And you'll see that when we get in a demo. Open it up, save the data back, and you're done. The other big benefit for them, a company, like a lot of manufacturing companies, managing margins is extremely important to them. Managing tight margins that really need, when you build up your plan, have a tendency to build the nth amount of detail to help you manage those margins. So whether that be, freight or pricing information or other, components of revenue, your underlying costs and how you tie that back, right, at the end of the day to your standards and your variances. So from a planning perspective, to drive the accuracy that this company wants, they plan at a very detailed level, at ship to level, at a product SKU level. But the nice thing about this tool is the sales team could leverage this tool to make high-level adjustments as a starting point to their plan, and then only go down to the detail level when they really had better information, and use the makeup from the prior year or the prior 12 months. So it didn't force them to plan to the ship to level, even though the logistics team needs that to come up with their budget. Allow them to use the current makeup for where they're shipping things unless they had better information. So that was very beneficial for them. Elimination of finance overhead, obviously, to collect and aggregate the planning information for those 125 plus users. So to do that for budget and then 4 times a year for quarterly forecast, a lot of effort to collect and aggregate all that data. And now going forward, they want to be doing this on a monthly basis, right? So that just wouldn't be, that's why some companies aren't able to get to a monthly basis without a tool like this. It's just not sustainable. So that goes along with ability to integrate sales planning process. You know, in the future, they want to be able to use this for demand forecast as well, so that they have one interface for all the financial planning as well as for demand planning, production planning. You know, benefit for them when looking for this tool is, hey, you know, we're going to be able to use this to collect and aggregate our planning information automatically. But then also, as we continue to build on this framework, we can provide the sales force with analytics directly out of this tool. So that's part of that cost-benefit analysis. So they can see their budget to go, for example. From a demand planning perspective, they're very interested in leveraging predictive analytics to update their monthly demand forecast. So that's something we'll be exploring with them in the future. And then bringing those all together. So when they come up with a demand plan today, right now that's just a volume plan. Well, they have all the pricing information and the costing information in the system. They could apply, you know, the financial information to that and actually dollarize that plan, right? And now they're able to do that. So that's just some of the benefits. You know, I think that's in line with what we talked about earlier. To cover off the process that was actually implemented to give you an idea of how this company leverages the tool sets. So what we actually do is we pre-populate for budget, for example. We pre-populate their sales volumes for them, which is the starting point for their plan. And we do that based off of a rolling 12-month period, and we allow them to select that. And then as they get into their projection and forecast, then we use budget to see that and update it and true it up with actuals. But we take that rolling 12 months, we do an average of it, and what the company actually does is based off of historical information, they decide how they want to spread this. We pre-seed percents into the system for them by market, and then they run a job that allocates this all out to incorporate the seasonality that they want incorporated into here by their individual end market. So then, based off of that, that is seeded into their budget as a starting point within BPC, and then or within SAP Analytics Cloud, as well as BPC. And what that allows them to do is that as they build up their budget, the way that SAP Analytics Cloud works, they can actually, you know, they don't have a great level of information as to what's going to be the variance or the changes month over month from a sales volume perspective. So their preference is actually to budget this as at an annual level, and they key in their annual sales volumes, and then that actually spreads that back to the month based off the preceded seasonality. And that all happens real time, so there's no job for that. So they get that pre-seeded to them. Their sales manager, executives go into the system. They update their volumes. Depending on their region, they either update it in pounds or metric tons, and then we convert everything back to a common unit of metric. The volumes are planned at a fairly detailed level, again, by ship-to, material code, by business team, which is their end market, and they have the ability to make these adjustments at a total market level, so that we're at a total territory level. So if I'm a sales territory account executive manager, I can come in and say plus 5% to my budget as a starting point, and then I can go and update all the details underneath it. And then other information that's really required for logistical planning, like we talked about with ship-to, but not necessarily needed for sales planning, like profit center, distribution channel. We don't even show those on the planning template, but it's innate to the data. It's already assigned so that as users update their data, that information stays with the data set. And we don't have to assign it downstream. So because we use that historical data to precede it, already has the profit center assigned, that stays with it. If a profit center transfer is needed downstream, then the BPC financial administrator actually performs that transfer as opposed to pushing that to the salespeople, which really don't have visibility into what that information would be anyway. Excuse me. So once the sales users actually lock their plan in SAP Analytics Cloud, once it's completed, it's locked. Their planning version is archived, And then this company actually has like contract managers who go in and review and make adjustments on top of that. So it retains the integrity of that original plan information. You can compare it to the final complex plan with reporting within SAC and within BPC. And then just to give you a perspective of how this information is used downstream, so the sales volumes are all fed back into BPC, where we calculate a standard unit of measure for pounds and metric tons across the company. The company uses BPC to plan new customer product combinations. So they load into BPC and reflect back into SAC through the salespeople. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you've got these contract managers who review the volume plan. Well, they're also the people that are responsible for loading the pricing information. They're actually, mostly for this company, they load margin. So they have a selection as to whether or not they want to plan individual customers by margin or by price. It defaults to margin because, for the most part, they pass through their underlying costs plus a, penny per pound margin. And then BPC calculates the sales based off of that. We also feed BPC with standard costs from SAP at the detail level from the bill of materials. So we calculate margin, the full margin by product, by customer, by plant, by all those other characteristics automatically within the system for them. So these contract managers load that information, they hit run, it recalculates all of this, and gives them a standard margin P&L. And then within the system, the company also utilizes BPC for expense planning and for overhead analysis to calculate, overhead cost per hour for intercompany planning. So they leverage the system for production planning based off production rules. So they say, this plant manufactures this product, so we trigger an intercompany sale. So the rest of their plan is very, very dynamic. So again, includes, expense planning, overhead tie-out automation. We actually calculate overhead rates for them. We automate the payroll calculations for them, allocate overhead, allocate expenses to markets, FX, automate eliminations. So all those other steps that are performed within the plan that are really math, we provide the tools within BPC so that as margin is updated and as expenses are updated, we run the logic to recalculate this. So again, what that means is that as you're updating your forecast, as opposed to what this company was doing before, waiting literally 2 months to build a P&L, they have a P&L as they're building their plan, relatively real time. Like some of these calculations, like intercompany, need to run in a job, right? So it's not, that piece isn't real time because that needs to run across the entire company, but relatively real time, right? Within that same day, they can refresh their P&L, their entire P&L. On the spot, they can refresh their gross margin. So a big change for a company that, started at 120 plus days for their budget cycle and should be finishing up at closer to 60, some maybe 90, right? Some of the parts of the budget cycle has nothing to do with what's actually done. It's negotiations between the businesses. But from a technical standpoint, they're not waiting 2 months to build all this stuff anymore. They've got the math all in the system. So it just should show you how kind of enterprise planning tool with BPC is working really well for them with SAP Analytics Cloud, getting rid of a lot of the manual effort and setting this company up to be better capable of continuing to grow with their existing finance staff, right? All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and get into the demo. So two things. One, I'm going to show BPC, and this is actually BPC 11. So it's just released here a few months ago. And what I have here is just a very simple demo application. So if I open up a new tab, you can see the dimensionality that's in this BPC application. So for those of you that don't use BPC today, I'm just going to give a very kind of quick explanation. So again, BPC, which is your enterprise planning consolidations tool, really the main interface is an Excel plugin. And I'll show you the web interface later at the end of this demonstration. But that makes it simple for people because they can create, Excel templates. They can create print-ready reports with this. You don't have to further manipulate, etc. But it's an Excel plugin to your database in BPC in your engine within BPC. So under this EPM add-in, you have a place for all your centrally held reports here. You have a place for your input templates where you load planning data back. You have a link for journals, for comments, so you can capture commentary with this system. You can do book publication, so you can take a set of reports for all your cost center managers and publish it out into a PDF, or take your quarterly board report and publish that out to a PDF. So this is just some of the functionality, standard functionality that comes with BPC. There's drill-through capabilities, so you set up a planning application if you want to drill back to a key code in SAP to analyze the variance. This is pretty cool functionality. We won't cover that today, but in a lot of our standard demos we show that. So this is just a toolbar. On the right-hand side of Excel, you'll see what they call the action pane. So this just shows from a report layout perspective, these are the different fields that you have to select from. And then if you're going through a planning process or consolidation process, it would also on this action pane show you the steps in that process. And then lastly, across the top in the EPM context, these are the different selections that you have within your application. So we have an account dimension, which has a P&L built into it, has a cash flow statement automated within this system, P&L, and then also just has, this is example for manufacturing company planning units or volumes, prices, and costs. So if I click on this first tab here, this shows for a specific market the end customers as well as the end products for forecast or for budget for the 12 months out. So that's what I have in tab 1. Tab 2, from a price perspective, the same set of information. So looking at a specific market, this is assuming the pricing is done at the same level. That is not always true. Sometimes your volumes might be at a ship to level. Maybe your pricing is at a sold to level, or maybe your pricing is at a market level, right? So that's to be defined based off the design for your specific company. And you might not have, again, units and price. This is kind of industry-specific example, but most companies have some sort of drivers that they leverage to build up their plan, and that's the concept here. You can capture these drivers within the system, both from a reporting perspective and planning perspective. And then here we've got units, price, and then revenue, which this is our gross revenue, not counting like freight and other things, which is calculated in the system automatically. In addition to that, you have different currencies. So I'm looking at, for Canada, local currency. I could change this to US dollars or Canadian dollars, and this is calculated on the fly. Have also worked with actually a company that, for the use case, not only do they plan, price or margin depending on the customer, but they also plan in transactional currencies because they have, different countries that transact in different currencies than is their local currency. So they have that option as well. So that's a capability that's available in BPC. It helps eliminate issues with fluctuations in currency, right? And kind of finger pointing away, hey, that's always the easy excuse. You don't hit your numbers. So anyway, this just shows kind of example templates, reports, output. Again, this formatting is very, very highly configurable. So this is our BPC application. I'll show you the web interface later. Here, this is our SAP Analytics Cloud solution. So this is our analytics solution. This is our financial planning solution for our business units. So this is through Chrome. So when I log on here, it just says, hi. It provides me a customizable dashboard. So I have an event reminder on here for a certain task that I need to complete. I have a couple different, dashboards or views that I may want to look at. And then these are all things that can be changed on the fly too. So you can add filters onto here. You can change the entity, and again, based off of what's most important to you, you can add this to a specific user group or user really targeted at that person. So if I click what I think here is called the menu bar, I think some people call it the sandwich bar. It sounds kind of funny to me, but you'll see the different options here. So I can create a story which is really an analytics word, right, for financial people. So I can utilize the analytics reporting tool to tell a story about the underlying data. The digital boardroom functionality, we won't show that today, the capabilities within SAP Analytics Cloud, so you can have an interactive boardroom setup where you have 3 big screens that are touchscreen enabled, and you can really interact with what we're showing here as well, which is pretty cool. Modeling capabilities, the modeling within SAP Analytics Cloud is very simple. So like I said, you can build that right on top of BPC, or you can build your own models, just even based off flat files or based off Salesforce data or other SAP data sources. There are plugins. You can create events, enable security, deployment, connection information, etc. So I'm going to go to the stories, and what we're actually going to show is a couple things. One, I want to show another example kind of dashboard that I think should just give you a little bit better feeling of some of the capabilities within the tool. And then secondly, I want to show you the planning process so you can see how these tools are integrated together. So just like my home screen, this is just another example of a dashboard. This is also, example for a manufacturing company that deals with backlog. So, we've got these nice product wheel presentations. I can look at gross profit, and these charts and visualizations interact with you as you hover over it, right? Here again, I could change a specific product and look at the backlog for that. You can look at personnel costs as a percent of total personnel costs, etc. So again, just another quick example of a dashboard capability. So this is more operational executive dashboard. Again, from a sales perspective, you can publish a dashboard that really just helps them look at their performance as their actuals come in versus budget, right? Without having to go to someone in finance to find that information. So next, I want to pull up this gross profit planning template within SAP Analytics Cloud. And again, this is built based off of BPC. Assuming I have a couple minutes, I actually may just show you how to do that so you have a feel for, right? And sometimes people say, hey, this is like plugged in, and then it really takes a consultant 4 weeks to do it. Plugging SAC into BPC actually just takes a couple minutes. So assuming we have time, I'll show you that. But this is an example planning template. This could be for a sales territory. This could be for a market, an entity. Plans really just depends on whatever level of detail that you want to do that. So within this template, we're planning units. We have this by customer as well as by product. We have our out periods in the columns. We can look at this for total 2017, or we can look at this for quarters or individual months. Whatever level of detail makes the most sense. And as I was mentioning earlier, one of the cool pieces of functionality is that account exec coming into this template, I can take, an entire, I can take an entire customer and say per the year plus 5% and hit enter. And then based off of the current seasonality that's in the system, this allocates it down to the individual months. This allocates it down to the individual products. So really pretty nice functionality, this disaggregation that happens on the fly allows you to plan at all different kind of levels of detail. It's also pretty cool for like corporate scenario planning too, right? As opposed to having to build all this logic behind the scenes, you can do some of this right in the face of it, this statement. So, for example, if I updated this whole year, this allocated down, this would allocate down to all the products. I could show, in this schedule, I could show a subtotal for my sales territory too if I wanted to as I update my plan and forecast information. And then that would allocate down for my whole territory if I just wanted to say, hey, take last year plus 5%, right? So what happens is I actually, as I update this information, so say for January, we were looking at our BPC template just a minute ago, right? In January, I'm going to update that to $5,000, for example. I'm going to close out of here, and what it's actually going to ask me, do I want to save these changes or revert them back? So it allows me to revert them back. I want to save this. Hit OK. So when I save this data, what it's actually doing is it's writing back to BPC real time. Again, so this is essentially kind of a plug-in to SAP BPC, or SAP BPC version 11 demo here. It comes back and says, hey, I transferred 12 records, which makes sense because I had one product on here. I updated the entire year, so for all 12 months. And then it comes back and says, hey, 24 records were submitted successfully. So why did that go from 12 to 24? Well, we have this set up for driver-based planning, right? So I changed that units from, whatever it was to, I think it was 5,000. So if I here, I've had this open for a while, I probably need to actually log on to BPC. So if I refresh this, this data has been written back real time. My BPC report will update immediately as well. And then whether you do planning for pricing or other information in SAP Analytics Cloud, or you do that within BPC, it doesn't really matter, right? It just depends on your user base, what makes most sense for them. So we've updated our units in SAP Analytics Cloud and immediately updated in BPC based off our pricing information that was in here already. It recalculated revenue, so that's why it said 24 records. So, for example, if I took this divided by the price that we already had in the system, that should be our updated units number from the system. So that's just kind of a quick example. Again, to actually be able to create this story, you can create this story in a few minutes. It's more just figuring out how you actually want to structure this. This is pretty easy to create. If you want to create a model in here based off of BPC, I'm going to take you through that because that's actually pretty simple. So if you're an existing BPC customer, I would think you might want to understand this, understand how kind of real it is. So first of all, you set up on your server, an IT person would set up a service, a download installation that allows you to basically put in your connection information in here so that you can interface with it. So once you have your connection set up, you can go to create a model. So I'll go to models here and click on add a new model. So this creates a model based off of a BPC model that we've already created. So based off this use case, if you're implementing, leveraging these two tool sets as a suite for your financial planning and line of business planning and analytics, you would build your application in BPC and utilize SAC to view that data and write back your planning information. So you'd already build that model in BPC and then you pull it into here to leverage it, right? You don't have to rebuild it in your analytics. You don't have to do a bunch of coding to pull over the data. This is simple. So you pick your model, you pick your system that you're importing it from, and then you pick a target model name. So I can call this BPC 11-2, and I can create a basic model, a read-only model if I just want to leverage this for analytics, if I'm not doing planning on it. Or if I wanted to write back, I choose the users can write back to BPC. And then I have the option to set mapping. So if if there's some differences in the underlying data versus what I want reflected in SAC, that can be shown here. If we want to filter certain things out, if you only wanted to show volume and price information but not full P&Ls in here, you could do that. So it just really depends on whatever you want to pull in here. So I'm just going to select, for example, a time period. They ask you to filter on specific time periods, so it's not pushing all the data back and forth. Because these then essentially have these updates that you can schedule from BPC to SAC. So you can have that run a few times a day, whatever makes most sense. And then the other required selection in here is version. So I could just say, look at ID and description. pull in my forecast information. There's the science. I hit OK. And map the data, and then I can load up the model, which is right back enabled from BPC. So it goes ahead and automatically creates the dimensionality within the SIC, your analytics and planning tool, and creates that connection between the two systems. And then to get it to write back to BPC, there was no additional configuration. So it creates that pretty quick, albeit this is a limited data set, from a demo environment, but it creates the versions, creates all the accounts, pulls in the hierarchies, and I have, pulled over quite a few different applications at this point. I haven't really had haven't had many issues. I had a couple issues with like formatting, where I had to change like special characters in a property in BPC to make sure that it came through okay over here, but outside of that, pretty good. So you can review it here, change preferences setting, hit save, and then it'll go ahead and actually, not only import all the dimensionality, but import the data, and you can start reporting and creating analytics off of it. So again, pretty quick. The data is integrated bi-directionally for analytics and planning. And then, for example, if I go into BPC 11, and for existing BPC folks, this is the new, web interface, new updated web interface. But if I went into BPC 11 and I wanted to add a product for planning purposes, for example, I could, as an administrator, go in, add a product, or if you wanted to set up master data on the fly to allow people to update, add products when they want, you could. But I could go in here, add a product, save this back in BPC or in SAC. I can copy data from one product to another to see it. And this new product will also get reflected in SAC, right? And so you have a scheduled job that will sync up the two systems. So again, bi-directional data integration. I add a product here, it shows up here. I update my planning information here, it updates here. You can leverage the logic within BPC for driver-based planning, so pricing, units, anything else, right, that would run in the default, perhaps, currency translations, right? You don't have to rebuild that in SIC either. So again, the concept here is allowing you to take what was historically more of a financial planning tool with BPC. Again, sometimes we would deploy it from a business unit perspective, but there are a couple hurdles there that commonly prevented people from doing it, or may have prevented people from doing it. And use a tool that's pretty simple to use with SAP Analytics Cloud, pretty simple to deploy, not ridiculously expensive, and you can use it for not only planning but analytics, right? So for a couple different purposes for that same user base. Got a couple minutes left. I mean, I could show another example, quick expense planning template. You saw sales and volume plan template, same thing, again, not only for salespeople, cost center managers, departmental managers are very good candidates, right, for this. Not people spend a lot of time in Excel, so a nice simple solution like this that is easy to update and plugs into the financial plan as opposed to having to mail files back and forth can save people a lot of time. So this is an example, again, kind of similar concept. I could come in here, I could pick my cost center, have my expenses in here. I could have my forecast or budget in here. As a cost center manager, I can make an update here, and then that'll spread down. One of the other nice pieces of functionality is you can actually like lock a specific cell. So if I wanted to keep, bonus at a specific value, but I wanted to move everything else up by 10%, I could do that. So I could say plus 10%, and don't think I did that right. That's what happens when you don't practice. But then we'll allocate it for all the other accounts. So, but I figured, I didn't go through this ahead of time, but I figured this would be good to show. In addition, just really quick flash up. I know we spent a lot of time talking the sales piece, but again, really, it's any leveraging this tool can help you decentralize to any of your non-financial stakeholders, right? So with that, I think ready to wrap up here. So Lauren, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to see if we have any questions. And otherwise, we'll close out.
Yeah, no questions right now, John. Maybe we'll give it a minute or two and let you guys get back to work.
That sounds good. You know, one question I can imagine people asking is, you know, very common. You know, if I utilize BPC today and I wanted to add SAP Analytics Cloud onto that to leverage for analytics, so how long would it take to do that? So I think today we showed, like, based off of this, you can stand it up and start leveraging that data very, very quickly. So even on a very small footprint, run a test user case, you could kind of play around with this tool and start to get a feeling for the value you can get out of it. So we can take it at whatever pace, you know, makes most sense. So yeah, I don't see any other questions. So thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you another time.
Have a great one, everyone. Thanks.